Imagine for a second that you are looking at the architectural blueprint for a massive, towering skyscraper.
Okay, I'm picturing it.
Right. But as you look closer at the plans, you realize it isn't just a diagram of steel beams and glass panels and electrical wiring.
It's something else.
Yeah, you start to notice that every single bolt, every angle of every hallway, even the exact tint of the windows, it was all calculated specifically to influence the mood, the choices, and, well, the ultimate destiny of the people walking inside.
Oh, wow. So the environment is actively steering the inhabitants.
Exactly. It isn't just a building anymore. It's a machine designed to create a highly specific human experience.
That completely shifts your perspective. I mean, you aren't just looking at structural engineering at that point. You are looking at a master plan for human development.
Right. And that profound shift in perspective is exactly what we are unpacking in today's deep dive.
It's a fascinating topic.
It really is. So we are exploring an excerpt from a centuries-old mystical text called Qlach, Pitchei, Chochma 14.
And specifically, we're looking at a translation by Abraham Greenbaum from 2005.
Yes, exactly. Sourced right from the Sefaria Library. And the core mission here for you listening is to really examine this text's boldest claim.
Which is quite the claim.
It is. It claims that the entire structure of existence, like everything we see, everything we experience, was reverse engineered and mathematically calculated for one specific purpose.
Yeah, and the framework mapped out in this text is essentially attempting to do what you just described with your skyscraper metaphor, but, on a cosmic scale.
A blueprint of the universe.
Exactly. It details the exact spiritual architecture of the universe, which it refers to through this concept of the Sephiro.
The Sephiro, right?
Yeah. You can think of the Sephiro as the spiritual levels or kind of the governmental order of reality.
Let's start with that foundation, because the assertion it makes right out of the gate completely flips how we usually think about our place in the universe.
It really does turn it upside down.
Right, because we tend to assume the universe was created first, and then humans were just kind of dropped into it.
Like an afterthought.
Yeah, like an afterthought, just left to figure things out on a rock flying through space. But this framework argues the complete opposite of that.
It does. It states that the Supreme Mind, or in the original Hebrew, Hamachshava Halyona, intentionally designed this entire governmental order for one ultimate goal.
And that goal is?
To produce human beings with free will.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, the environment was built to facilitate the inhabitant, not the other way around.
So if the universe is essentially this, giant terrarium built specifically for human free will, what does the text actually say about the mechanics of the humans placed inside it?
Well, Greenbaum's translation gets incredibly specific about those mechanics.
Okay, how?
It outlines that humanity was given 3 primary attributes to make this whole system work. First, intelligence. Second, a good inclination. And this part is absolutely crucial, an evil inclination that can be controlled.
Okay, the inclusion of an evil inclination that can be controlled. I mean, that's the linchpin of the whole thing, isn't it?
It really is.
Because if a system is designed specifically for free will, you can't just have an entity that is perfectly good all the time, right?
Precisely. If a human is perfectly good without any alternative option, they don't possess actual agency.
They're just a biological robot at that point.
Exactly, a biological robot programmed for goodness. So the framework explains that this specific setup, having conflicting inclinations, but also the intelligence to choose between them, it provides humanity with what it calls a method of service.
A method of service.
Yeah. It creates a mechanism where we can earn merit or, endure correction when we make the wrong choices, and that moves us toward an ultimate eternal reward.
Okay, I want to try an analogy here to see if I am grasping the mechanism right.
Go for it.
Think about the development of a massive, complex, open-world video game.
Oh, I like this.
Right, so the developers spent years building this incredibly realistic physics engine. They code, dynamic weather systems, intricate lighting, a map that takes hours to just walk across.
That's massive amounts of data.
But they don't build all of that just so there's a pretty digital sunset to look at. The procedural generation, the physics, the map, it is all coded solely to allow the player to make meaningful moral and strategic choices within the game.
That is a highly accurate way to visualize it, yeah.
So the physics engine basically sets the immutable consequences for what the player does.
Exactly. The underlying code of the universe dictates the consequences of moral actions. It provides a stable, predictable backdrop for human agency.
Right, because without stability, choices wouldn't mean anything.
Exactly. And the text explicitly points out that the overarching goal of all this creation is the, quote, perfect bestowal of good.
The perfect bestowal of good.
Right. The supreme mind desires to bestow good, but for that good to be truly meaningful, it has to be earned through free choice.
Ah, I see.
It cannot just be unearned charity. It wouldn't have the same value.
So to facilitate that earned merit, you really do need a perfectly stable system. So where does that system originate in this framework? Like, what's the source code?
Well, everything in existence originates in a foundational principle, what is called the first light.
The first light.
Yes, and this first light is named Keter, which translates to crown.
Okay, cheater.
Keter holds the entire blueprint. It contains the fundamental law that every subsequent spiritual and physical reality just sort of compiles from.
So if Keter is the overarching source code establishing this goal of free will, how tightly is that code written?
What do you mean?
Like, does the framework view the universe as just generally supportive of free will, sort of a loose sandbox, or is it a more rigid, precise structure?
Oh, it is engineered down to the absolute microscopic detail.
Really?
Yeah, the framework aggressively rejects the idea of a random or loosely defined universe. And to illustrate this precision, it uses this striking analogy about building a fire.
Oh, right. The fire analogy. I remember reading this part. It compares the supreme mind's creation of these spiritual levels to a person trying to build a fire for a specific task.
Exactly.
Like, they don't want a raging inferno that destroys everything in the room, but they also don't want a tiny spark that accomplishes absolutely nothing.
Right, they want a very specific, moderate heat.
And to get exactly that moderate heat, you need a precise mathematical quantity of wood.
Yes. If you add even one extra piece of wood, the fire burns too strongly and ruins the work.
And if you use one piece too few, it doesn't heat up enough, and the work still fails.
It is a fascinating metaphor for mathematical precision in a dynamic system, isn't it?
It really is. And the translation notes that the Supreme Mind created exactly as many spiritual levels as were necessary to produce the human condition.
The phrasing is very absolute. It says, not one more and not one less.
Not one more and not one less.
Exactly. With exactly the right number of interconnecting links.
And this is where the philosophy merges with what we could almost call like a hyper-engineered spiritual anatomy, right?
Yes, anatomy is the perfect word for it. The framework details that this spiritual structure contains exactly 613 lights.
613.
Yes, and these 613 spiritual lights are explicitly said to perfectly parallel the anatomy of the human form.
Wait, really? Like 1-to-1?
1-to-1. Specifically, they map to the 248 limbs and the 365 interconnecting channels, like veins and sinews in the human body.
Okay, wait. I need to challenge this because this introduces a massive paradox.
Okay, let's hear it.
If my spiritual environment is a fixed, exact map of my physical body down to the exact number of lights and channels, doesn't that actually destroy free will?
Wow.
Well, if I am living inside a hyper-calibrated, mathematically perfect machine where literally everything is already mapped out, aren't I just a rat in a perfectly engineered maze?
I see what you're saying.
Like, where is the agency in a system that is that rigid?
That is the natural friction of this concept, definitely. But the mirroring isn't about determinism. It is about mechanism.
Mechanism.
Right. The reason the spiritual architecture mirrors human anatomy is so that physical actions can act as levers.
Levers. How so? Like pulling a lever on a machine.
Yeah, think about it this way. If the spiritual world and the physical world were completely disconnected, your physical choices wouldn't carry any spiritual weight.
Right? There'd just be meaningless movements.
Exactly. So by mapping the 613 spiritual lights to the human anatomy, the framework suggests that when a human uses a physical limb to execute a moral choice,
Say, like using a hand to give charity.
yes,
Yeah.
or using speech to resolve a conflict, when they do that, they're actually pulling the corresponding spiritual lever in the universe.
Ah, I see. Okay, so the physical body is essentially the user interface for the spiritual machinery.
That's a great way to put it.
So I am not a rat in a maze. I am sitting at the control panel. When I move a physical limb with moral intention, I trigger a corresponding spiritual reaction in the whole system.
Exactly. The anatomy dictates the mechanism of your choices, not the choices themselves.
That distinction is huge.
It is. And to complicate this machinery even further, the framework describes interconnections between these levels, referring to them as partsufim.
Partsufim.
Yes. This essentially means different states or visages that garb or clothe one another.
Okay, that term, garbing or clothing,
Mm.
What does that actually look like in a practical sense?
It's a bit abstract.
Yeah, because to a modern listener, spiritual visages garbing one another, that sounds like incredibly dense mystical jargon.
It is dense, I'll give you that, but we can unpack it with a physical comparison.
Please do.
Think of it like a series of step-down transformers on a power grid, or even like Russian mestingalls.
Okay, step-down transformers.
Right. The Supreme Mind's ultimate intention is the perfect bestowal of infinite good. But if you were to hit a finite, flawed human being with raw, unfiltered cosmic energy.
It would probably obliterate them.
Exactly. It would be like staring directly into the sun without any protection. You'd burn up.
So the energy has to be filtered somehow.
Yes. The Partsufrim act as those filters. One spiritual state garbs or encapsulates a higher, more intense state, stepping down the voltage, essentially.
Like putting layers of clothing over a bright light.
Precisely. Layer by layer, visage by visage, the reality is filtered until it matches the specific frequency that a human being can actually interact with safely.
So the clothing is what makes the universe survivable and navigable for us.
Exactly.
That makes perfect sense. The precision is just astonishing. So we have the 613 levers mirroring our anatomy and the step-down transformers filtering the reality so we can interact with it.
Right.
But knowing this system is engineered down to the exact piece of wood, it is basic human nature to ask the next logical question, isn't it?
Yeah.
Why was it built this particular way? Like, why 613 lights? Why not 614?
Sure.
Why this exact configuration of limbs and channels and not a completely different design altogether?
And here we hit the most fascinating and perhaps controversial philosophical boundary in the entire framework.
Oh, really?
Yes. It sets a hard limit on human inquiry. The text explicitly lays down a rule: we cannot ask for a reason why the structure exists the exact way it does.
Wait, it literally forbids the question.
It does. To support this boundary, it cites the sages and refers to the book of Genesis, chapter 1, verse 31.
Which says what?
It states, "And God saw all that he made, and it was very good."
Okay.
So Greenbaum's translation uses this to point out that a person shouldn't engage in thought experiments like, if I had 3 legs, wouldn't that be better?
If I had 3 legs. I mean, I have to admit, that example is almost comical.
It is a bit funny.
But it perfectly captures those late-night existential spirals we all fall into.
Oh, absolutely.
Like, why are we built this way? Why is gravity exactly this strong? Why is human nature designed to be so relentlessly difficult?
We all ask those things.
But hold on. I have to push back hard here on behalf of anyone listening.
Okay.
Telling humanity just because, or you aren't allowed to ask why, that usually feels like a massive cop-out.
I can see why you'd say that.
Especially when we are talking about the overarching meaning of life, or, when people are enduring real profound suffering. Just saying don't ask why sounds like a convenient way to avoid answering the hardest questions of human existence.
It absolutely sounds like a cop-out if you view it as a dismissal of human pain. But the logic presented here isn't trying to silence inquiry.
It's not.
No, it is pointing out a fundamental hardware limitation.
A hardware limitation.
Yes. The framework argues that to truly understand the why behind this incredibly complex, mathematically precise calculation, you would need to know absolutely everything the Supreme Mind knows.
Ah, I see. You'd need the processing power of the creator to understand the underlying source code of the system.
Precisely. Let's go back to your video game analogy.
Okay.
A character inside a video game cannot comprehend the programming language that built the servers they exist on, right?
Right. They can't access the
Yeah.
code. They only possess the tools that exist inside the simulation.
Exactly. So for a human being to understand the ultimate why of the cosmic architecture is simply impossible. Our hardware cannot run that software.
So the restriction isn't arbitrary censorship. It is just pragmatic reality.
Yes. The framework states there is no better reason for the structure than the simple, unavoidable fact that this is the way it is.
It just is.
Right. This precise arrangement, the 613 lights, the 2 legs instead of 3, the specific balance of the good and evil inclinations, it is exactly what is required to produce the eternal nature humanity needs to achieve perfection.
So asking why it wasn't done differently is basically a futile exercise.
Because you don't have the cosmic perspective required to evaluate the alternatives. You can't see the whole board.
Okay, I hear the logic in that. I really do.
Okay.
But humans are innately curious.
We are.
If we can't ask why, what are we supposed to do with all this cognitive energy? Are we just supposed to accept the 613 lights and the 3-legged boundary, shrug our shoulders and move on in like passive acceptance?
Not at all. And this is where the framework becomes highly actionable.
Okay, how so?
It doesn't tell us to turn our brains off. It tells us to redirect our focus.
Redirect it to where?
Well, once we accept the foundational blueprint that the universe is a perfectly calibrated system designed for our free will, we are strongly encouraged to investigate the function of these levels.
So we shift our inquiry from asking why to asking how.
Exactly, moving from the unknowable origin to the practical application.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, we are supposed to examine the purpose of these spiritual levels, how they operate in our daily lives, and how they move us forward toward that ultimate goal of the perfect bestowal of good.
So the inquiry doesn't stop. It just becomes localized to what we can actually control.
Yes,
I
exactly.
think this conceptual pivot is incredibly liberating for anyone listening right now.
I agree.
Just think about how much existential pressure we put on ourselves trying to figure out the unknowable why of our lives.
Oh, constantly.
Like, why did this specific hardship happen to me? Why is the world structured with so much inherent difficulty? This framework is essentially giving you permission to put that crushing burden down.
It relieves the paralysis of the philosopher's armchair. It says you cannot know the ultimate why because you don't have the cosmic blueprint in front of you.
Right.
But what you can do is channel all of that existential energy into a highly practical how.
How do I navigate this precise system I've been placed in today? How do I use my physical levers, my speech, my actions, my intelligence to interact with those spiritual channels?
Exactly. How do I control my inclinations in this specific difficult situation to earn merit?
It takes this high-level mystical architecture and grounds it entirely in everyday action.
It really does. It frames every single experience, no matter how trivial or painful, as fundamentally useful. Remember the fire analogy.
Right, the exact amount of wood.
If the system has not one piece of wood more and not one piece less, then nothing in your life is extraneous.
That is a staggering reframing of reality,
It really changes how you look at a bad day.
for sure.
Yeah.
So let's do a quick recap of the journey we just took through this source material, because we covered some incredibly dense ground here.
It's a lot to process.
It is. So we started by exploring this concept from Qlach, Chochma, that the universe is not random or indifferent.
Right.
It is a highly calculated, reverse-engineered system originating from the first light of Qatar, designed specifically to facilitate human free will.
And we then looked at the breathtaking precision of that system.
The fire analogy, requiring the exact mathematical amount of wood for moderate heat.
Yes, which is mirrored in the 613 spiritual lights that map perfectly to the human anatomy. We saw how our physical bodies serve as the interface to pull those spiritual levers.
And how raw cosmic intention is filtered down through the partsufim, or step-down transformers, so we can actually survive it.
Right, so we aren't overwhelmed.
And finally, we debated the philosophical boundary the framework establishes, the pragmatic rule that we must pivot from asking the impossible, unanswerable question of why was it built this way,
To the highly actionable question of how do I function within this perfectly calibrated system?
It is a blueprint that demands active participation, not passive observation.
It really is a call to action.
It really is. And, I want to leave you with a final thought to ponder as you go about your day, building on what we've unpacked here.
Okay.
If this text is right, if every single spiritual level, every channel, every scenario you encounter was calculated with such microscopic mathematical exactness.
Just like the precise amount of wood needed to keep a fire burning perfectly.
Exactly. If that's true, think about your daily life.
Yeah.
Think about the traffic jam that made you late. Think about the difficult coworker who just tests your patience.
Or the unexpected setback that ruined your plans.
Exactly. How might viewing those everyday, mundane frustrations as perfectly calculated, entirely necessary pieces of wood for the fire of your own personal development change the way you react to them tomorrow morning?
Because if you look closely enough, maybe you aren't just looking at a series of random, annoying events.
Right. Maybe, just maybe, you are looking at the exact blueprint required for your growth.
A blueprint designed with the sole intention of helping you earn your own ultimate good.
A perfect mechanism. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We'll catch you on the next one.